So welcome, guys. This is our 18th episode of Canadian S&C Shop Talk. For those of you that are new, it's hosted by myself, Sam Alice Frayne, Trevor Cottrell, and Jordan Foley. How it started, just a little bit of a brief rant, I would say. As most of you guys know us, we like to, rant about almost everything, and we decided why not share that with everyone else that we love in the industry. So here we are. So, it's been going since, I think it's a year almost next week, which is pretty scary to think on the COVID front, but I'm pretty excited about our chat today. We've got two head S&C coaches from both of my alma maters, which is pretty neat. We didn't have that at all when I was in school 10 and 15 years ago, so that's pretty exciting. But we'll start off today with an update about some CSCA stuff, USPORT, what's going on in the NSCA, and then we'll get cracking into our amateur sport tidbits if people are interested in getting involved into that Wild West. So we'll kick it off with Trev.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. So as most of you know, Sam and I are on the board of directors of the Canadian Strength Conditioning Association. Jordan is on the education committee. So we're very involved with the association, trying to move things forward. And I think we're gaining some nice momentum now. This new board is getting work done. They're sitting on all the committees. The committees are getting work done. And the big announcement is save the date. On Saturday, May 1st, will be our inaugural CSCA National Conference. Online, of course. Well, of course, online. But anyway, so we're going to have our first national conference. You say, well, why should I go to that? There's so much stuff online. Well, what's neat about what we've done is, remember, CSCA is a not-for-profit organization run completely by volunteers. Your peers, some of the people that are on this call are involved. And it is truly coast to coast, and it represents all the provinces. Unfortunately, a few of the provinces are underrepresented, but hopefully that'll come along. And what this gives us, though, is an opportunity to actually bring everybody into one forum. Not everybody has been in one forum together. This forum here is very Ontario-centric. We don't get too many people outside of our little bubbles. And but this conference will be a lot from BC, a lot from Atlantic Canada, the usual Ontario folks, a little bit of Quebec, and a little bit of prairie provinces presenting. Mostly, it's going to be basically a Zoom call is how it's going to be run. It's all going to be recorded. You're going to get access. You can go back and watch afterwards. The base price early bird, make sure you get in on that, $35 early bird, which is reasonable for, geez, how many sessions are there? 12 sessions or something all in. And late registration will be $50. It'll run, because of the time zone sensitivities, it runs from about 10:40 a.m. until about 5 p.m. Eastern time. And that allows for the people in BC not have to get up too early. We have academics there. We have high performance people. We have university people. We have the whole cross section. Lots of different content. There's no one specific theme, but it gives you a chance to get caught up with everybody, see who's doing what, and see some names you've heard about, but maybe you haven't listened to. So I think it'll be a neat little event. What's great about it, we have never collected a penny from membership. All the costs of the website and everything has been taken on by an angel investor, you could call them. And so we've accumulated like $5,000 from that individual and just keeping things running. So now we got to start standing on our own feet. So we need a little bit of revenue to do that. And then our website is okay, but it's not where it should be. And we're working towards memberships as well. So who is going to become a member and what is the value add for that member? And we need a little money to make money. So to get the association rolling so that we can move in that accreditation credentialing type realm and build up our education services and outreach. Anyway, so that's the CSCA in a nutshell.
What's Jordan? I believe you're on the presenter
yeah, Jordan's
list there.
famous.
What are you going to grace us with?
Who knows? Characteristics of strength and conditioning coaches in Canada. So I would imagine a number of you on here were part of the survey that I badgered you to fill out back a few months ago. So I've finally done something with that. We got 215 responses, which apparently is quite good. A lot of the ones that are published already are like 60 people, 100 people, that type of thing. So I'll be presenting some of my findings from that. My biggest finding was when you ask 200 plus people, 60 questions, you get a pile of information. So we'll tease out some things and start presenting what I like to call point B when we look at kind of establishing a pathway for aspiring or developing strength and conditioning coaches. I think it's important for us to tell them what point B is. So if I want to be a university strength and conditioning coach, how old are those people? What education do they have? What experiences do they have? And so on. So that's kind of mine in a nutshell, and probably Johnny on the spot because I squeaked in with a lot of presenters there that are far exceeding me in experience, knowledge, etc.
Oh, I don't know about that, Jordan.
Always
You're
so
just being
humble.
humble.
Yeah.
He's always so humble.
I'm following
So
up Scott
giving, too.
Livingston and Ed McNeely. So
That's fair.
like,
You squat more than both of them. Forget them.
that's true.
NSCA, what do you got
Yeah.
for us there, Jordan?
Yeah, not much from the NSCA right now. They are trying to push everything they have online, but actually discouraging the provinces, states, and regions from hosting official NSCA events so that it doesn't take away from the national in July, which will likely be virtual. I guess the only thing of note was they have released and they're really publicizing that and promoting that new textbook for the new certification. The textbook is essential to sports science, regardless of what you think of the presentation. I'm sure that that'll be worth a read as far as a good reference manual and good starting point for that type of stuff. That's all from the NSCA.
I was wondering if anybody here on this group, has anybody got the book and reviewed the book yet? Yeah. Look,
Yeah,
all
we're-
right. Looks like it's got a good cohort. What do you guys think?
Pretty good. Dave McDowell and I have been reading through it, and it's quite well put together.
Yeah, it looks like a good cohort.
One I'd recommend. 1,000 pages is pretty thick, but each of the chapters are quite well laid out.
Trevor, is that the NSCA book?
The new sports science one, yeah.
Yeah, I have a copy. I would agree with Steve. It's like very thorough. My comment to a few other people that I've been chatting with about it is I have no idea how they're going to create an exam out of it because each
huge.
topic is so well written and well in depth. I have no idea how you could cover it all in any sort of exam.
Dougie, I'm glad you said that. Well, because it's right. But me and Dale were chatting about this, and one of the things that they have in some of the descriptors as far as the people that they're looking to qualify with this is about being applied sports scientists. So obviously the most important factor for being an applied sports scientist is working with what you have and all of these types of things. So they're going to force you to learn in depth about a bunch of technologies that people may not even have. They might not even be the best application for your case study group. And there could be a guy or girl that's worked 20 years in high performance sport and never used any of these tools, be an elite level sports or performance scientist, get examined on it and fail just because it's an irrelevant tool if you can't use it in your environment. Anywho, it will be interesting to see if they can get this certification accredited, meaning that kind of the questions are a reflection of the material. It'll be tough for them.
So with respect to USPORT, as most of the people on this call know, and we'll have a couple of them that are actually in USPORT speaking today, there's still several regions in the OUA in particular that still haven't opened or are still in lockdown. And so the big question that has started to be created across not just the OUA but USPORT is what's going to happen in the fall. We had some of this discussion in our last chat. And it does look like there is a Schedule A and a Schedule B, so Plan A and Plan B for the OUA anyways, in terms of where we're going and what the plan is going to be. So that's hopeful that there is plans in place already for what that competitive schedule might look like for fall and for winter sports. The question is, are those programs that haven't been able to do any training up until now, so the GTA in particular, and then a couple other regions, are they going to be granted ability to actually continue with sport practice in the summer, even though in history and in the past, there have been blackout months, so in particular for football. So there's a lot of those questions going up in the air right now, just from a safety perspective of athletes being able to train ahead of time. So, and then the other question is how long is training camp going to be? So if you start September 1st and you want a 3-week or a 28-day training camp, the issue is that most of the time training camps are maintained outside class schedules, which allows you to do 2-a-days or slowly ramp up your progressions, or for some coaches do 2-a-days in full pads, and that's also scary in itself. But that's the question. What's that going to look like? So lots of committees being created, lots of information being put out there, lots of surveys across all the regions to identify through coaches, through athletes, kind of what their perspective is. So that's positive. It seems like it's coming together a bit as a unit, which is good. Anything specifically from the West there, from you guys, Cole, do you guys have an update from?
Not overly. Apparently there were some restrictions lifted as far as like social gatherings and stuff, so non-sport related, but as far as I'm aware, we are still where we're at as far as no contact, no competitions, although there is rumors that might be lifted sometime soon. Our health minister is very optimistic, but currently we're still kind of the way we have been since December. So teams are training, like they're in the weight room, socially distanced, masks on, the whole deal, and then no contact in practices.
Yeah, and that's pretty similar on the East, bit more open in some areas like the West is than the OUA. But the big concern for us now is, especially within Ontario, we have these regions of color codes, and it's any given day you're moved from one color code to the next. And Sarah can speak on that for sure in terms of you're open 1 week, close the next week, open 1 week, close the next week. So we're really crossing our fingers that doesn't happen within any of the sports that are competing for the OUA. So it's really uncontrollable. So we'll see how it goes. That's it from USPORT.
I was wondering, any other random news from the group? We haven't really reached out. I know Josh Ford, you have a little bit of things going on there. Do you want to announce that, or is that not the place?
I don't mind, I guess. It's not necessarily a secret, but for some, I probably would have spoken to individually, but no time like the present. So I am moving to Rodney, Ontario with my wife.
Good old
Now,
Rodney.
first off, where is
Rockin'
that?
Rodney.
That's what everyone says when I say we're moving to Rodney.
It's by the
It's-
en route.
Yeah. Steve, sorry, Steve. Steve's like, what? Rodney is about halfway between Chatham and St. Thomas. So we bought a couple acres down there, and we're going to convert. The plan is to convert a barn into a fitness studio and train a few farmers.
Amazing.
The best
They know how to
part-
work.
Well, exactly, and they're probably in pain, so I hope I can help with that.
Yeah.
So I'll be at Guelph until June, and then it looks like I'll probably stay on for a bit through the summer just to help with the transition, maybe into the fall. We also have some other transitions happening within our athletic department, which makes it challenging on the intercollegiate side. So I will do my best to make sure that the transition happens smoothly. But we're really excited and looking forward to a change. And if anyone wants to buy my house, I'll send you the listing. It's beautiful.
Cool million.
Yeah, I thought it was being listed as a commercial space now. Are you just going to sell it to a big business and double up on the price there?
I'm honestly willing to sell it to whoever's willing to give me a lot of money for it. So
A lot. Good stuff. Well, that's exciting news. There you go. Positions may be opening up in Guelph. Come visit us, fine people of Guelph. Any other general news? Anyone? Any other university news? What you got, Stevie?
We are finally about to hire an athletic director. So that's our athletic director positions closed a few days ago. We've shortlisted, and then we'll commence interviews in 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to finally having someone after Neil Lumsden was in that seat when I originally got here. So looking forward to that.
You on the committee?
Yes, sir.
Ooh, very nice. Tell me all the names.
Can't do that.
No, shoot.
You could, you just shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, you should not. No.
And definitely not here.
No.
So we're in a similar situation. Our associate athletic director is finally looking to be hired as well. We're doing final interviews next week, which is great. It's been vacant for 2 years now. So obviously those can understand and appreciate the difficulties of that, especially through a pandemic. So we're really excited about that. Our assistant S&C position for football in particular just closed yesterday. So we're going to be doing interviews next week for that position for starting in, supposed to be April, but looks like it might be a little bit later now given that trajectory. And then for those of you guys that don't know, I'll be going on mat leave in July. So we're going to be looking to hire someone in that interim. Emerson Marasudi is going to be doing interim head S&C coach during that time until the following July. And then we're going to fill his role, which is full-time as well during that time. So from July to July. So look out for that. That should be posted in, I think, the middle of May.
Good stuff. Should we get going then with the main event?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, guys, on to the keynote. So 2 months ago, episode 16, we discussed high schools and strength conditioning in high schools. Is there a way to get it in there? And we recognize that it's a very difficult process to bring strength conditioning into the high school setting, although it is doable. There's ways it can be done. It's just, it's not going to be mass adapted anytime soon, at least in Ontario. Some other provinces are doing a little better job at it. But ultimately, we all know that the key to long-term athletic performance is early development of our athletes, and from a strength conditioning perspective especially. If you can develop a young athlete from a reasonable young age to be able to move well and move well under load and move well explosively, then you've got someone entering into the actual competition sphere at 16, 17, 18 years old at a high level of functioning. And you don't have to spend 2-3 years just training them up at the age of 18, 19, 20, just to give them the capacity to be able to deal with the training loads needed to be at the elite level on the field or whatever sport may be. So knowing that, we have to find a way to capture our young athletes, 10 and up if you want. Let's throw that number out there, not that there's any magic number for it. So how do you go about capturing them, knowing that, of course, elementary schools aren't going to do it, and most high schools aren't going to be able to do it? And well, that leaves only one option, and that is the private for-profit model of strength conditioning, where you're getting amateur athletes into your facilities and training them up. Now, obviously, you can put out a shingle and you can build your little shed there, Josh, and say Josh's gym and hope people show up and that kind of thing, but it's not easy. And so we have a bunch of people on this call who have more or less specialized in this in a variety of different settings. Specifically, what I want to hopefully tease out is how to form partnerships with amateur sport clubs. And that is the biggest challenge. Amateur sport clubs, your soccer, volleyball, basketball, football, rugby clubs that have hundreds, if not thousands of athletes that pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a year to be members of these clubs, and yet receive no real respectable strength conditioning services as part of that membership, and ultimately don't get the full development that they should be able to get. So how do you reach out to these amateur organizations that are run by volunteers, often in a not-for-profit model, volunteers that turn over yearly, volunteers who have their own vested interests in Susie making the team, and form partnerships with them where you can actually collect funds sufficient to keep Josh's gym open and pay the lease and pay the hydro and pay everything else. So that is a very challenging thing. If you think it makes sense, you think everybody should be able to partner very readily with it. There's all kinds of synergies that should exist, but it's not easy. And so everybody that is a speaker on this call has had these relationships. Some have been doing it for years in one environment, some in others. So I'd like to introduce you to our panel. Sarah Applegarth. If you don't know Sarah, she's been around forever. We just found out how old she was, if you were here at the start of the call. But she's in Collingwood, Ontario, so the middle of freaking nowhere. And why I wanted Sarah on this call is because she's gone to that small town setting. She's set up a private facility, and she has partnered with amateur sport. That's some of her primary thing. Of course, she has the sports medicine side as well. And she's been able to make that a go for over a decade, right, Sarah? You've been more than a decade there?
Oh yeah.
Because I've known you
I'm
for
not-
15 years, I think now, right?
Mhm.
15 years you've been up there.
Yep, since I was like 10 years old, I guess.
Mhm.
You've known me. Yep.
So I'm going to let you come on and tell us a little bit more about it in a second after I go through the whole list. Next on my list is the famous Derek Salvador. If you don't know Derek, then you should know, and clearly you live in a hole. So Derek Salvador, what's unique about him is he's the soccer guy. And I don't want to typecast you, Derek, but yeah, you're the soccer guy. And what's cool about that, though, is he has made partnerships in a variety of regions, the Waterloo region and Oakville. Oakville's one of the largest soccer organizations in the world, it seems. And he has actually been brought on within these organizations as their strength conditioning coach. Plus, he does stuff privately, and he's traveling all over the province. I don't know how he does it, but somehow he stretches himself pretty thin and manages to train people out in the farmer's field. He trains people in ditches. I don't somehow he makes them into athletes. Anyway, so Derek, you've been doing this for what, 10 years now?
Yeah, it seems like forever. I don't know.
No,
Every
maybe
day
even
now
longer
just
than
seems
that,
the same.
right?
What-
So I rescued,
yeah,
we
I
rescued
think
you from,
so. I think so.
didn't we rescue from twist conditioning back in about 2010? Didn't we
Well,
rescue you?
Yeah, you guys did rescue me from that. You probably even rescued me from my entertaining days of working rehab in a hospital.
Oh yeah, that too, right? Forgot about
Yeah,
that.
that too, man. It's been a long journey, but
When
yeah,
were you at Basic Motion? When was that time?
somewhere
It's
in between.
2012 to
I just-
2015, is in that range, yeah.
Like I have recollections of everything, but it's been over the course of the last few years where I've kind of forgotten about the fine details of all that stuff as we've kind of moving on in here and stuff. But no, that whole thing with twist is, the funny thing is that yeah, that experience was what it was, but it kind of like learning from it kind of led me down the path that I am now, and kind of venturing into more amateur sport and kind of figuring out what issues were as to because they brought me in as the soccer guy, but yet no soccer teams wanted to come in and train. And so by talking with them, is like we kind of figured out a new path, or a path that at least I thought would work. And it's been going okay so far, you know what I mean? But yeah.
COVID accepted, but yeah. So Novanta Sport, look him up online. Next, Andrew Hopf. Andrew, you don't hear much about Andrew, but he seems like he's everywhere. Like he's always in the background. And people talk about Andrew, but you don't see him yelling online or anything like that, like some of us other folk. But Andrew is in Cambridge. What's neat about Andrew is he has both his own private facility. You have two facilities, don't you? Do you still have two, or is it one?
Just one now.
Just one. And he bridges with the University of Waterloo as well. So he oversees SNC at University of Waterloo, plus he has his own private facility. And so I thought that would be a unique perspective where he's trying to balance both, and how he splits his energies to each of those things and puts people in charge and make those work. And you've been in business for what, almost 10 years as well, right?
13.
Yeah, okay, 13 years, good for you. And then, might as well get rid of him. Give him a chance to speak one more time, seeing as he's just going off and doing his thing. Josh Ford. So I wanted to bring Josh in, or we want to bring Josh in, because we wanted that university perspective, because all of these university ADs are saying we want revenue generation. They're doing it at this school and this school. So here we want you to generate revenue. We want you to form community partnerships. Same at Sheridan where we are. We want you to form community partnerships. We want amateur teams coming in here and training. Let's do summer camps, that kind of thing. And Josh has experimented with that. And now that he's on the way out the door, he can be perfectly open and frank, and he doesn't have to hold back at all about that. Josh, you've been at Guelph for 7 years, 6 years?
7, yeah.
7 years.
It was 5 days from today. It was the 17th. So it was St. Patrick's Day.
Excellent. So now we're just going to go round robin. I'm going to give you a chance to get on a soapbox and tell us a little bit more about yourself. Specifically, tell us about your experiences in working in amateur sports. So what kind of teams do you work with? How do you manage it? Do you just cash pay at the door? Do you have partnerships where the members pay? Whatever. Tell us about your system. Probably about 3 or 4 minutes each. Let's not get too long-winded here, Derek. So we'll start with Derek.
So the answer is all of the above. So my experience with amateur sport is basically providing services for teams, through either the entire organization, so through certain programs, or whether it's individual teams who sign up, or also working with individual athletes. And so that's kind of been the way I've been going about it. There are specific programs that I do work with, and then there's also specific academies that I work with. So yeah, that's pretty much it, pal. Nothing too exciting to go on about
So
there.
all soccer.
Yes, all soccer. Yeah.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You're finished soccer and what?
No, I was going to say venturing into some different sports, and this is more like the individual athlete now. Just something that's actually just with the times and COVID, the way things have changed a little bit. It's because of the way the world's working right now, and some organizations are back to training, some are not. Some have limitations now with what they can and can't do. Funds are limited right now because some clubs have basically issued refunds, and so haven't been paid. So they're trying to generate income again. So it's kind of been now it's individual athletes who are kind of calling in now asking for services. So I'm kind of venturing out into some just independent stuff with like field hockey, some hockey players. So it's kind of changing and evolving with these times right now.
And with the Oakville Club, you were kind of like the director of strength conditioning. I don't know what they called it. What was the fancy term they used?
Well, yeah, they gave me that title. I don't know if I really do anything that's remotely close to that title, but so the way it kind of works is that the way it kind of got all started was, I don't know if people are familiar here, but there's a pathway that Ontario Soccer tried to create or have created. So it's called the Ontario Player Development League, and what that is it's a high performance pathway for elite level soccer players. And their idea is to try and have certain standards of coaching, certain standards of programs that they have, and then from there basically trying to push as many players as they can onto like provincial programs, League One, and then hopefully up into the CPL. So that's kind of their initiative. And so with Oakville, I am actually head of strength and conditioning for that program. So I have about 10 teams that I'm responsible for there. And then after that, it's kind of like, I'm available to the club if they need it. So if teams want to take me up on what I do, they take me up on what I do. If they want to go to, Joe Blow's boxing gym and do spinning and boxing, they can go do that. If coach feels like they know what they're doing, they want to take them to the park, they can do that. So, so that's kind of like, that's kind of like my role within that club there.
Yeah. So you're wherever, you don't have one centralized training space at all. You're all over the place, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of how I figured this thing out with Twist is, we were there and, they're like, we want you to bring on our soccer teams. And so you start talking to all these different coaches, and like the way training's structured is, especially with OPDL, they may train 3-4 days a week. And then after that, they have, maybe 1 to 2 matches per week, depending if they have cup games or if they have to travel, because with OPDL, all their games are played on the weekend. So sometimes they have to travel up to Kingston and Ottawa, down to Windsor. They would pass by Rodney, Ontario. I think I've seen Rodney, Ontario. There's like a tree there, maybe. I've done that trek many times as I'm a graduate from University of Windsor. So, but anyways, yeah. So you add all of that up, and then you're asking these teams to also come in for another day of training, right? And so talking with coaches, I'm like, what would make you guys more, like, what would get strength and conditioning, like, how would I get more buy-in into what you guys, like, how could I bring what I want to bring in and you guys be more accepting of that? And they just said, we'd love it if you came to our training facility. And that's kind of like how my business was born, is that, I just packed everything up and I threw it in the trunk of my car, and I drive to training, and as far as from a business perspective, I don't have to worry about, paying for square footage or rent or anything like that. I just got to put gas in my car and just make sure it runs, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I've driven all over Ontario now. I think I've seen a lot of things now, but that's kind of the model that I started going for. And then through that, just building some relationships. So now I have a really good relationship with the private high school out in Oakville that allows me to rent their facility. And so now I bring all my athletes there and train them there. So it's just something that's evolved based off of necessity and just something that I could provide. Right. And the thing is, I've always thought about opening up a spot, but being so spread out, I just don't know where I would put it. Right. So I've kind of just just kind of kept going with what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. So Andrew, tell us about your varied clientele and your connections with amateur sport and how you've evolved that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's very similar to Derek. Back in 2008, the strength conditioning was very young in the region of Waterloo, and I didn't have any money, so my grandpa sold me his van at a really cheap rate, and I threw all the equipment in, and I went from field to field and rink to rink and trained whoever I could train, and that kind of led down a path of starting to work with what started with a lot of hockey teams and a lot of ringette teams actually in the area. My wife and I decided to get kind of our own brick and mortar space, and which we still have. So right now we work with I would say 40% of our team base is hockey. 60% is actually soccer, like Derek, the OPDL program that operates out of Cambridge. And then the rest is individual athletes, whether it be from those teams or organizations, or individual athletes to come in and just kind of sign up on their own. So yeah, it really started out with me trying to, I don't know how to say it, but like try to position myself as being like the head strength coach of a U14 hockey team. And I would go to games, I would go to practices, I would go to tournaments. This was early in my 20s. I did whatever I could to really try to be like the head strength coach for that team, but quickly realizing that you can't do that for multiple teams at a minor sports setting. But what it did do is really allow me to build really strong relationships with parent groups, coaches groups, develop a trust that they knew they could rely on me for hopefully some good coaching, and that has carried forward for the last 10 years of my life. So that's on the private gym side, and then even at the university, we're trying to provide some outreach services to local hockey organizations, and not so much as a revenue generating perspective, but more as a oversight perspective to help guide them, put together some policies, procedures on how to do proper testing, vet local strength conditioning facilities to make sure that they're providing proper programming. So it's really, really nice. I actually don't work out of my own training center anymore. My wife's there as the boss, and then we have some full-time staff members that do a fantastic job there now. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, and then Josh. So Josh, tell me about the evolution of amateur sport partnerships and how that worked out at U of G.
Yeah, I think when I was hired, there was an understanding that, revenue generation was going to be part of the job. And having been fortunate enough to work with Steve and him having done such a great job, they said, hey, he's been really good at it over there and you worked with him. So let's make sure we do a really good job here. But it took a few years. I mean, I had to establish the varsity side of things first. And then once I kind of had, a bit of a staff from a student perspective, it was like, okay, let's start to investigate this rev gen piece. So I know when Foley was there with football, he was doing some stuff as well. And both of what we did started really small. Most of it was existing relationships, people reaching out to us. And then one of the benefits of the U of G is that we have the Junior Griffin program. And so under the Junior Griffin umbrella, we have basketball. So it's basically a partnership with existing local, youth sport organizations, and they just, don the Griffin and they get access to our facilities and things like that. So we have basketball, volleyball, football, hockey. I think the rugby squad. Sam, is Redcoats now Junior Griffins or no?
No.
No. Okay. Couldn't remember. Soccer. And so that made it easier to then develop some of those relationships and have some of these things happen. So we've had, sorry, my phone's ringing. So we've had teams from all of those sports train with us. And then, we've had other organizations that aren't Junior Griffins within the community also reach out to us. So the Guelph Minor Baseball Association, we had several teams from there train with us in the last few years. We had a unique partnership with an OSBA team, so Guelph Prep in the Ontario Scholastic Basketball Association. So it's sort of the Ontario prep circuit for youth basketball, high school level. And they had a team hosted out of Guelph. Unfortunately, only lasted a year, as some of those things are really challenging from a business perspective. But So we worked with that squad. It was a girls team for a year. We've had the Guelph Nighthawks in, so I guess that's not amateur technically, but you're maybe walking the line on that one. And then we've had other partnerships with sort of PSOs and NSOs. So either from a rental perspective, looking for facilities. So one of the benefits that we have now is hopefully in the fall, we'll probably have the most square footage of any school in the country from a strength and conditioning perspective, in terms of the stadium. And then our Griffin Performance Center has been expanded recently. So football and track have a place to train while they're doing a renovation there. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility in being able to rent out our facilities. So Rugby Ontario and Rugby Canada have both been rentals. We had a partnership with Field Hockey Ontario as well. And some of these things, I know we'll probably go on to talk about this, but a lot of these relationships happen because of existing relationships with, myself and other people in the sporting world, or just, our coaches having relationships with other people in the sporting world. And then internally, we've also offered some fee for service for some of our Griffin teams that we don't service technically under the SNC model. So our swimming team, our lacrosse team, and our baseball team have bought in to receive services and access to our facilities in the last few years.
That's a little bit of everything, right? So speaking of everything, Sarah has been doing everything up in Collingwood. Tell me about all of your teams.
Okay, well, the first team I actually, funny enough, just here listening to Josh, the first program I ever wrote was when I was just graduating from Guelph, and I was playing on the hockey team. And I wrote the program for our team that year because, as Sam mentioned, there probably when she was playing too, there were no strength coaches. We had no strength coaches. We went to that stupid circuit that they used to have, and you'd do your 45 seconds at the station, then you'd walk to the next thing. That's what we had. There was a little gym there. Like, we didn't have the facilities you guys have there now, which is amazing. So when I graduated from there, I got hired by Barry Shepley and Sheldon Persad at Personal Best, and I ran a figure skating facility, and I was a hockey player. So it was a bit of a funny transition for me there, a bit of a different culture. And I ran that facility from pretty much right when I graduated school, had no idea what I was doing. Whether they know that or not, I don't know, but I figured it out. And then in 2002, moved up to Collingwood and with my husband, and he's a ski coach. So he runs one of the private ski clubs, the racing program. And so there was a natural progression there into ski racing. And I worked with Alpine Ontario, so the provincial governing body for alpine skiing, for a number of years, and was the strength and conditioning coach for that organization. And I brought a sort of program in that was across Ontario. I think actually Steve Lidstone was one of the guys. I had strength coaches all over Ontario that I created a program and an exercise manual, which is funny now because everything's done online. But I know Steve had that first manual I ever did with the exercises, and wrote the programs. And we directed kids, because in skiing, geography is our biggest issue. You can have a group of kids that are on the same ski team, and one of them lives in Peterborough, one of them lives in Oakville, and the other one lives in Collingwood. So we created a bit of a provincial wide program, and that ran for quite a while. And I think it was I'm pretty proud of it. It was a great program, and I really met some great people through it. Great strength coaches. We had therapists in each location as well. So kids would be directed to their facility and their therapist and get a pre-movement screen and all that kind of stuff. So I did that for quite a while. And from that, the parents started coming to me saying, "Hey, I'm a skier, I'm a hockey player. Can you train me?" And so I was setting up kind of like some of you guys. I had my back of my van full of equipment and BOSUs, and taking stuff to fields, and there's not a lot of facilities here in Collingwood. So rented a church gymnasium for a while and set up 3 times a day for classes, and then would see clients in my basement. Vicky Bendis, one of your Brock coaches, was one of my clients that used to come to my basement, and I trained her to make the national hockey team and women's team. And then I decided I got to get myself organized here, and I got to consolidate everything into one place. So I've had a facility For 11 years now here in Collingwood. And we doubled our space about 6 years ago. So now we've got about a 5,000 square foot facility with sort of 3 different strength rooms and a studio for yoga, Pilates. And I have a bunch of therapists that work with me, physios, kins, athletic therapists, chiropractor. And so we have sort of a bit of an integrated, well, it is not a bit of, it's an integrated facility. And as far as athletes, it's a small town, so we work with everybody. We've got, skiing and hockey would be our 2 main, volleyball, rugby, our baseball league here in Collingwood, basketball, soccer, our swim club. We've worked with everyone. We're kind of known as the place in town that athletes go. And we also have programs. So we work with teams, but we also have programs that kind of follow the sport for life, fundamental 6 to 10-year-olds. We have a little program for physical literacy that anyone in the community can sign up for. And we have that all the way up to what we call elite performance, which would be sort of like OHL, provincial ski team, that kind of level. And I would say, so I have 2 kids that are teenagers and they both have been multi-sporters all the way through. And I would say I made my inroads with all these organizations because my kids either played them or I coached them or both, or my husband, between the 2 of us. And that's similar to what Andrew said. That is how people knew to trust me. So I coached, my daughter's hockey team. And so the hockey team would come in and we'd fitness test them and train them and, go through all that stuff. So a lot of my stuff happened very organically, because I was training the president of the rugby club at my gym and they said, hey, can you do some of this stuff with our kids? Or, the head of the basketball Trailblazers, she's one of our clients. So we work with them. So it's sort of the, Josh, you'll see soon when you get out into the small town world, it's everyone knows everyone, and for better or worse. So you got to always have your smile painted on and don't screw up.
Quote, don't screw up. Yeah, one aw shit.
Great pep talk.
Go a long way. All right, speed round. Here's the scenario. You can only do business with 2 amateur sport organizations. You have to make all your revenue from them and you have to be able to do it without going insane. What would be the 2 sport organizations you would choose to work with that are your favorites? Andrew, go. And why?
Soccer and hockey.
Why?
I'll speak on soccer. So soccer, I think the model that, at least here in Cambridge, and it sounds consistent across Ontario a little bit, they have a technical director in place, and then they would have some sort of high performance director. So they just have a leadership model that provides continuity and consistency, and oversight and support in terms of implementing a curriculum across the board. I think it provides also a strength conditioning model that can be repeated on a yearly basis, and you're going to have them for multiple years instead of fighting for teams and having to resell and kind of convince coaches with different mindsets year in, year out, which you would in a hockey world, which is my second pick. So hockey would be my second pick. And I think partly that's just kind of my nerdy side, is I want to give back to the community that I wasn't, when I was a kid growing up in Cambridge, we didn't have strength conditioning. If we did, it was just running hills and getting tortured at a school gym, just being told to run for an hour straight. And it was no fun. And I think that our community deserves better. And I want to be part of that solution for our area. So those are my top 2.
Josh, Junior Griffins, what were the best, most supportive groups?
Well, I'm pretty much just going to repeat what Andrew said there, for all the same reasons. So one of the things with the Guelph Soccer organization is that there's just so many kids, right? So I think a few years ago when we started our partnership, they had I want to say it was a ridiculous number, like 10,000 kids participating. I think they've lost a few in recent years. They had some business trouble, I think. But they also had some forward-thinking leadership, and I think Andrew hit on a big point. Is if you have people in organizations that understand the importance, then I know one of the things we're going to talk about today is how do you get across to these organizations that it's important. If there's already people in the organizations from a leadership perspective that get it, then it's a lot easier. And so soccer is one of those sports where it's also getting, a lot of parents are kind of starting to ask the questions, why are we having all these ACL injuries or whatever? So it's a sport where we see a lot of traumatic injury, and especially young female athletes. So a lot of kids, great leadership, and an opportunity. There's a problem or a challenge to solve there. And then I would echo the hockey comment as well, because it's one of the sports where it's more common to train from an early age. So again, you don't have to do as much selling. They're already into it. Really, all you have to do is build trust with them and show them that you know what you're doing and you're able to help them. And so if you can do that well, then I think you're gonna make inroads. And of course, the numbers game again. There's a lot of kids playing hockey. So I will say, from a leadership standpoint, our Guelph Girls Hockey Association, so we have two, the boys and the girls are different, and it's probably common elsewhere. The leadership on the women's side or the girls' side has been more engaged, and the parent groups have been more engaged. But I forgot what I was going to say. But anyway, yeah, here's my two.
You're saying the women's hockey rule. All right, I'll take that. Okay, and then Sarah, are you going to differ with these guys? Are you going to throw skiing in there or something? What are you going to do?
I'm definitely going to throw skiing in just because of where I live, and sheer volume up here. And for skiing, it's a very more of a European culture where multi-sporting and training is sort of integrated into the culture of skiing. I used to go with my husband when he was coaching. We'd go to Whistler for ski camps in the summer, and part of your camp is the training. That's part of it, doing the strength and conditioning and the agility work and the plyos and all that kind of stuff is all built in. Mobility is like 100%. That's an every day at the end of your ski day. There's a mobility piece, warm-ups in the mornings, like all that stuff. It's ingrained in the sport and the culture, especially as you get into the higher levels, obviously, but it's really ingrained for kids too. So that for sure would be one of mine, and hockey is the other one. I mean, I agree with all the previous comments. For me, it was my passion. It was the sport I played, and I find that hockey is one of the sports, and I've worked with some AAA organizations. I still am, well, COVID, no, not so much this year, but I find with hockey, you can make a really big impact because I think it's getting better. Certainly in the time I've been doing this, it's gotten a lot better, but it's more of a culture where people tend to specialize their kids early into hockey and they miss a bunch of the other stuff. And you can hit on that stuff with the strength and conditioning piece with hockey, and you kind of trick them into doing the things that they really should be doing at the various ages, and not just skating all, spring, summer, fall, and winter. So I think you can make a big impact in hockey players. And hockey players do need to be able to run. They do need to be able to jump. They need to be able to do all these other things. And they do translate into sick goals like Austin Matthews last night in overtime. If anyone saw that, it was ridiculous.
So hockey and soccer, so boring. So Derek, I'm not even going to ask you because I know soccer is going to be in there, but I'm going to let you lead the next round of questioning, because what we want to know is, what is the best way you found to bill amateur sport? Do you build the billing into the membership structure so all athletes pay an extra $20 on their membership, and then that services the top 5 teams and the club or organization pays you? Does the team take up a pool of money and the team hires you? Or do people just sign up for whatever your preseason soccer camp, 12-week camp, and they each pay you individually out of pocket? What would you say is your division of those, or which one do you prefer?
It's been all of those guys. Like, if I'm totally honest, at the end of the day, I got to get paid somehow. So I'll take whatever I could get. I think as far as I think as far as, trying to develop a program, I think probably being built into the fees where you're kind of representing, a philosophy throughout the club is probably best. You're going to get best buy-in that way, in a sense, where, you're working closely with your technical director, you're working closely with your high performance director, your director of coaching, and trying to come up with a curriculum that you can then, place through the existing teams that you'll be working with, right? So I think from a buy-in sense, maybe that might be a little bit easier. But like I said, it's been a multitude of different ways. I don't honestly know which way is best. I could be doing it wrong. But just some of the things that we're trying to do moving forward with the Oakville Soccer Club, like trying to instill a philosophy that the entire club kind of adheres to, because right now we got everyone doing all these different things. We don't know what kids are learning. As they start to move up through the levels, once they start getting into our high performance environment, we do start to see a lot of things are lacking. And so, maybe are they getting the necessary education that they're supposed to be getting? I don't know. But like I said, for me personally, if I had to do this and really try to come in and do the job that I think that I can, I would like it to be built into the fees and then just be paid, a salary and then implement from there.
Awesome. Andrew, same question. Do you build it into fees? Do they all pay up front, or is it a team by team thing?
A little bit of both. I guess similar to Derek. So I think with our larger organizations where it's part of their mandate and their holistic development structure, it's built into their fees. And then the organization would pay us on usually we bill them quarterly for it as we are doing year-round programming. With a lot of the hockey programs and other sports that we have, it's not built into the entire organizational model. So each team will be billed. And we usually, we try to be flexible, to, understand what they're collecting or what their structure is in terms of collecting money from parents. So we'll kind of usually bill them 4 times throughout the year at kind of times in which they'd be collecting money from parents. And then what we also try to do is really try to encourage, because for the most part, and Derek, I don't know how it is for you, but with a lot of the teams, at best, we're seeing these teams once a week. And we'd really like to encourage a little bit more frequency if possible. So we usually offer a discount to the athletes who are on the teams that are participating in our programs for them to come in and pay as individuals as well. And that would be billed on a monthly basis. So those are a little bit of a hybrid, a little bit of everything. I don't know if that's the right approach, but I would say 60 to 70% of our monthly revenue comes from a team-based, already built into their program type of fees instead of them paying us directly.
And do you find that when you do the calculations hour by hour, your costs and your return on investment, it can be more consistent that way? Or is it, you got to chop the price down so much because it's bulk that it's not any more profitable? It's just more consistent.
Good question. Yeah, like I wouldn't say the team training model is necessarily profitable or as profitable as would be as an individual level of things. Usually you do have to chop down the cost a little bit. We're trying to find what that ideal cost is to allow us to be profitable long term. I don't know what that is. I haven't made a lot of money off my gym. I'm kind of just doing it out of the good of my heart now. But yeah, like it's in a perfect world, you're having a lot of individuals pay $15 to $20 a session for multiple times a week, but that's not going to get you the volume you need to stay in business, I think.
And Sarah, a little different model or similar?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, we've had things with volleyball and soccer where they pay up front for 20 sessions for the team and they bill the parents directly and they just cut us a check or whatever. And they just chip away. And those are kind of once a week type things. Our hockey organization we work with, we invoice them up front and we do programming for them all through the off season. the kids live all over the place. They live in the boonies. Like some of them don't even have access to gyms. They live, they'll maybe next to where Josh is moving in, and he can set that up in his barn and they can come to his place. But we built that stuff in ahead of time. They all did some sort of assessment at the beginning, and then we created their programs, and some of the teams would then come back as a team once a week and actually train as a team. But that's tough slug. Some of the kids are driving 2 hours from Kincardine or wherever up in Owen Sound, an hour. And then our PSO stuff, like with Alpine Ontario. So all through COVID, like basically the ski season got shut down. My son was actually at the national championships in BC and got canceled right in the middle and sent back home. And so skiing just stopped dead right in the middle, like hockey did. And they ended up hiring us to do Zoom workouts for these kids that had all of a sudden they're like, they're right in the middle of their highest competition of their season and they're stopped dead again, much like hockey. So we did Zoom stuff, and they build a program to all those high performance kids. The kids all paid up front to the PSO, and they paid us monthly for running these Zoom workouts with the kids. And then the last model is similar to what Andrew was saying. I mean, it's our programs that we run 3 times a week, and those are the ones that get the biggest bang for the buck. Obviously, you don't get the team building with your team and all that stuff, but the kids come, they can walk or bike after school, and they just come straight to us. And 3 times a week they're with one of our coaches. But you've got rugby players that are training also with hockey players and skiers and swimmers, and they're all training together in a group, which actually I think is really great. It's great for the kids psychologically as well, I think. And they all have strengths within the different sports. It's been really cool integrating the sports together, actually. And you kind of have to do that in a small town. We don't have the pool of the Oakville soccer. In fact, our best soccer players, some of them drive down to Oakville. You're probably training them, Derek. But it's tough to make it in a sport in a town like this, unless you're a skier, because you have to drive for the competition. So.
And Josh, at the university, it's a little different. It's a bit of a almost captive audience in some ways with the Junior Griffins program. They're handed to you to some extent. I'm assuming there it's all part of a camp fee or something like that. Is it all kind of integrated? And then there's probably someone administrator at your school that takes care of that. Is that true?
Wow, that sounds way too much common sense for a university to think of up front, Trev.
So it's not going on like that. Oh, shucks.
You're looking at the administrator. And that's one of the challenges here's the takeaway, I think, from everybody so far, is that in order to make money, you have to remove as many barriers that people have to actually giving you money. So if you can make it as easy as possible and give them as many options, then that's the best way to do it. And so we've done the same thing that everybody else has done. One of the challenges is that we deal with, some of the software and backend programming that we have through the university that we have to use in order to track, revenue and things like that can be a real pain in the butt. So typically what when we had a large contract with Guelph Soccer, they did all of it was built into the team fee, and then they paid us directly at the end of the year. And then we've done it every other way too, where the team pays up front, and then usually it's like the team manager or the coach or somebody will just cut you a check, and then he or she collects the funds from the parents and what have you. But we have had a few requests where people want to pay individually as a team, and it's just a bit more work on the back end. And I actually probably have spent like an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out how to streamline that and make it better. But there's just challenges with some of the software and things. So if we did have an administrative person to handle that, it would probably make things a lot easier.
Yeah, it's incredible. Large organizations like that don't like collecting money. They just don't have systems for it, right? So now back to Derek, young Derek. Soccer, I find that they tend to be, you've heard my rants on soccer, a little bit snobby about their strength conditioning. They seem to know what's best. They saw the YouTube videos, that kind of thing. Tell me, Derek, how do you walk into the door with these amateur sport organizations and the coaches and say, you know what, I actually know what's best for your kids, when it comes to strength conditioning without turning it into a pissing contest? Please tell me, give me your advice.
It's very, very, very gentle nudges and no pushing allowed. Because if you push, they're going to push back even harder. You know, we're still trying to figure this out.
Derek, is that
It's one of these-
like a soccer push or a real push?
What's that?
Is that like a soccer push back or a real push? Like, would you move or a fake step?
I don't know. I was never a guy who played like that. I was usually the guy putting out the hurt and stuff, but however you want to look at it, right? Yeah. So, but yeah, no. So yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought here because we are talking about the world's greatest sport, the one that everybody plays, right? So anyways, let's just continue with that. So so yeah, it's really building these relationships with the people you're working with, right? And I guess the thing is a lot of coaches will they'll get their back up because they're going to come in and understand that you have a certain type of expertise, and all of a sudden now you're maybe questioning their training sessions, you're questioning their design and how they put things together. You know, why are kids running laps and wasting 45 minutes of an hour and a half training session where they could be playing the game and getting their fitness that way, right? So it's really coming in and just trying to talk the language with them and try to make them, aware that we're there to assist them, we're there to work with them, rather than questioning what they do. And I might have done that early in my career, is coming in and be like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why can't you do it this way? Why can't you do it that way? Where now it's like it's coming in and let's talk about your style of play. What is it like? How do you want your team to be set up? And then based on that, now can we work through your training session on how you're piecing together your activities or your drills that are going to get the best out of that, right? So really it's coming in and just trying to be like, hey, you know what, we're here to assist you. We're not here to step on any toes and stuff. We're here as a resource. Listen, I've been at the Oakville Soccer Club now for almost 8 years. And there's still coaches there that don't know what I do. Like, I walked into a meeting once and started to explain some things, and one guy put his hand up, and I did my coaching license, one of them with this guy, and he looked at me, goes like, who are you? What do you do? And I was like, guys, like, really? Like, we're like, I have to introduce, and I guess that's what it's like, right? So again, it's just building relationships and just trying to get them to trust what you have to say.
Sounds hard. So Sarah, I want to start coaching skiers too. There's a bunch of skiers near me. You had an in. What if you don't have an in and you're not a very good skier, such as I? How do you break into these groups?
You got to get to the coaches, or you got to figure out who the highest maintenance parents are, which is not usually that hard of a thing to do. 20% of them cause 80% of the headaches. I think that's what they say, but they also have the biggest mouths, so they get you what you need. You got to get someone in your corner. So someone's got to advocate for you. So you go in, offer to do a free talk, offer to do like I've done so many talks at ski clubs, and show them that you know your stuff. They're always looking for coach education. If you can get in front of parents, even better. But you've got to get through a layer before you can get to the parents. Usually you can get to the coaches or a head coach or something like that. That's really it's you got to pro bono. You got to get out there and sell yourself. And one of the best things that we did was we got in the schools and we were able to do talks, physical literacy type talks at the elementary schools around here. So that's not going to help you necessarily with skiing, but that was one of the ones that, like, yeah, I've done my fair share of sweat equity over the years to get the to get my face in front of people. So I did have an in, but still I've had to do tons of leg work. But the schools was a big one. If you can ever get in the schools and get doing talks, or we were able to, at my kids' schools and some of the others in town, we were able to get some physical literacy type programs going with those kind of 6 to 10-year-old ages early on, and that got our name out in the community pretty well.
Well, there you go. Maybe I'll give it a shot.
You got to learn to ski, though.
Oh, I broke my collarbone doing that. Andrew, you're kind of a hockey guy, but you broke into the soccer world. tell me how well, you went to games and everything, you did everything. So tell me how you form those relationships if you can't go to every game and tournament and convince them that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we use the soccer example, like it was interesting because that one took probably 6 years of work before it actually turned into, kids that we actually got to train on a regular basis. And similar to Derek, I mean, when you go in and you have a very, very reputable and strong opinion technical director, that has a certain way of looking at things and they want it a certain way. They're also working to, if they're going to put forth any motion to, it better be a good job. And so it was very similar to that. It was going, listen to what they were looking for, have an understanding of what their long-term vision is, and be a resource, and try to just, I would say, provide value in the beginning without asking for a single dollar. So I would do talks, I would send resources, I would just have conversations, try to help them solve some problems before any sales conversation came up. So that was an interesting kind of experience with the soccer organization, that ended up, still providing, some really good opportunities for the kids and for our business. But it's looking back, it was hard. It was, if I had to do it all over again and start from scratch, I don't know if I would do it any differently. I think, going in, and yes, being a coach is one thing, but going in and kind of going all in with a couple of teams, doing over delivering, building relationships, building trust. Because if you can do that with 17 families, or how many ever it is, so that's 17 kids, that's gonna be 34 parents plus coaches. Now your network grows from 30 to 150 really, really, really fast, by just doing a job that's second to none. So that's how I would do it if I had to do it all over again.
Yeah, Trev, and sorry, one thing that Andrew said I think is really key there is that, each situation is unique. And so coming into it where, kind of like, what are your needs? Like, what are you guys looking for? And then, trying to come together with, how we're going to solve this problem, right? So the way I implemented at Oakville is completely different than the way I implemented at, at Waterloo, which is different to what I do at the academy. Right. And so it's like, okay, what are you guys looking for and how can we best support you? And then from that, we kind of create the model of training that will work best and appease everyone who's involved. So great points.
What I did find is, once you built these strong relationships and you built trust, then they would actually start to give you a little bit of say in terms of what the curriculum does look like. They're not going to be the ones that are dictating anymore. They'll start to pass that off to you and say, hey, you're the expert here, you deal with it. We'll deal with the administrative side, but you're now the one that's in charge of deciding what the curriculum, and not testing protocols, because that's dictated by Ontario Soccer, but which is nice.
Good advice. I like that. So Josh, same theme, but slightly different twist. Yeah, again, you get a bit of a captive audience. You've got the Griffins brand. It's already there. People want to be involved with the Griffins. It's payback. But then I'm sure you run into situations where it's coaches want to tell you how to do your job, maybe, or parents want to tell you how to do your job. They don't agree with your programming. How do you form those relationships and build the trust?
Yeah, I just want to follow up though on Foley's comment, and I've been stockpiling cans of compressed air for when my 3-year-old daughter starts playing soccer, so that when she goes down, then I can just give her a little with the magic spray so that she gets used to, the soccer culture. But
see, buddy, no. Players have gone soft because they rely on the spray. When we were young, it was the magic sponge. That water healed everything. And I'm serious. It works. It works.
She's actually playing soccer, so that's cute. It's going to be good. But my answer is one word: listening. It's just, sometimes parents just want to talk and coaches just want to talk. And they don't even need, like, it's not even that I think that they believe they know the best way to do it over the professional, but they just want to get in their 2 cents. And so one of the less than glorious parts of this aspect of my job and people who have done it within our department is that you just spend a lot of time listening to parents and coaches blab on about what they think is important and what they want to see. And oftentimes what I found was if you just spent time listening, then you build trust that way. And then at least you understand what they want to see and what they want to get out of it. And it's an opportunity for education. And it's the same when we work with any of our varsity coaches, right? It's spending a lot of time listening and trying to find common ground and meeting them where they're at. But I think that was probably the most successful part, is just, just listening and spending time. So it's an investment of time to sort of get to know people and get to know what their expectations were. And then after you do all the listening, then you can start to sort of do those gentle nudges, I feel like, and more of the education pieces, and talk to them about, hey, have you seen this? Or, this is what the literature says on this, or, depending on who you're talking to, if it's a parent or a technical director or something like that. But yeah, I mean, everybody said such great things. That was the only thing different that I wanted to say, was just spending a lot of time listening.
One thing I was thinking about is, I think we were all talking, is the common element when we are talking to coaches and parents that I think comes through is if you're coming at it from the lens of well-being and using training to enhance their experience, not just for the sake of training, but to enhance their experience through health and wellness and well-being so they can stay in sport. That's always a good common denominator to come at it from, that I found. We're not talking about jumping higher, running faster, but it's usually we're dealing with skill-based sports. So it is a matter of staying in sport and optimizing their experience and time they have as a kid.
So Campy, you had a little bit of rant in the chats there. Come on and tell us about your experience with the swimming groups, because swimming, talk about a big ticket item. People spend a lot of money on swimming, and you want to make a change. You get a swimmer strong and it changes their game a lot, but they just spend too much time swimming. So how do you get in with the swimming groups? What's your experience?
I was brought in because someone knew what I had as a background. To start with, my daughter's involved, so Sarah mentioned, like, getting involved in a lot of cases because you were a parent involved, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, got brought in, and they wanted a strength and conditioning program, but I think it was being directed more at the higher level swimmers. But you were offering a couple days a week of, let's call it play night, to entry level swimmers. Participation rates were really, really high at the bottom end, but people are paying for it. And most recently, now that everybody seems to be having a little closer eye on what it costs to swim and how that money's being used, there seems to be a change in terms of the focus with respect to the dry land and strength and conditioning. Not everybody wants to pay for it. And I think they'll work that out. And people that want it will pay for it. It won't be streamed or anything like that by levels. It'll be by who wants to pay. And I think that's the concern in itself is, again, those who can pay will get, those who can't pay won't. And where does that lead? In the end, the kids that can't pay don't progress as fast or get access to the same sort of enhancements and those kind of things, and they don't move on because they can't afford it. And it's more of a philosophical question, I guess, but I think it's a concern.
Yeah.
And that's the rant is, I don't, I'm looking at clubs now, and every club I've seen amateur level is going to raise registration rates, but they're not offering more program. So again, and I think a lot of the speakers on here probably have the path that's, going to be the path, and that's kind of, access it sort of privately, or a team decides to contract somebody on the side. I don't know if you're going to get a full association, except for those that I think in the case of soccer, hockey, swimming's probably in that boat too, that seem to have money. But
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm on boards of amateur sport, and they've lost tens of thousands of dollars, some of these organizations, tens of thousands, because they're still paying insurances and accountants and leases and that kind of thing. And so they have to, like my Guelph Minor Football, we're just talking about $150 rate increase for tackle football. $150 on top of it. So it's $900 instead of $750.
Right.
And you're not getting anything more.
You get nothing more.
Nothing more. No, it's just going to cover the debt. So
And
anyway,
I think that's a concern. But anyway,
we have time for maybe one more. So you guys were chirping at dry land and off ice, and Buddy's personal trainer dad who takes the team out and runs them in the hallway, and you say, oh, that's such garbage. Let us do the job. Are we doing a good job? So we get these teams to commit. We got 15 kids in a room. They're in and out in 45 minutes, 1 day a week. We get the money. Is there quality control? How do you manage quality control? And Derek, you're out in the fields, going field to field for a half hour. How do you show that there's value in what you do? How do you demonstrate that what you're doing is more meaningful than the dad down the street doing the personal training in the hallway?
Yeah, you hope you're doing a good job, but I guess the big thing is that, something that we alluded to earlier is where, parents and coaches, they look at it where, where you think about, when you're looking at fitness, like people look at speed, power, strength, all that other kind of stuff. And it's like, you get that, but then, I guess where we add value is where we look at quality of movement, right? And to ensure people are moving safely, they're moving well. If we can show that, their players' movement patterns are improving, or if maybe, they're presenting with certain positions that, put them at risk of injury, or, risk of higher load, maybe that's a way that we show our worth to the group, right? That's why, like, with some of the groups that I'm working with, it's like, listen, just with some conversations, like, hey, my team's not fit. And it's like, okay, well, what do you want me to do in 45 minutes working with them once a week? Like you can't pin that on me. And so now, what about your training sessions? And this isn't like a tit for tat. It's like, what are you guys doing within your training session that can maximize more of that? Right. And so now if you guys can work on your fitness within the training session, then we can focus on the quality of movement, et cetera, right? So that's kind of, I guess, how we try to show our worth and what we do, and just trying to get, it's a lot of education, just trying to educate the players, and just having them have a better understanding for why they're doing what they're doing, and then trying to assist coaches, having conversations with the coaches. And then oftentimes it's having conversations with parents. We try to send out, newsletters, or we do kind of our reporting. We try to give kids individual reports so they can show mom and dad, and so just trying to build in buy-in that way, and just try to justify what we do that way.
How about you, Sarah? How do you know you're doing a good job?
Well, I actually like to take that super keen dad like Trevor with his kids, and I like to take that parent and actually bring them in the loop, because they're going to be with them. Like, it's usually the trainer of the team or whatever. Bring them in the loop and teach them. So show them what you're looking for when you're doing the SAQ work that you want them doing as part of their warm up. Like, loop them in. It's gold to find someone that's super keen, and just try and have them, like, I like to have them come with when they're at our facility and we're doing our sessions, and I talk them through what we're doing, what we're looking for. If you see, one of the volleyball players with an excessive valgus, and you're trying to cue them, or there's something they should be thinking about, I like to empower that person. I like to empower the dad Trevors of the sporting community, because they've got the time and energy. And if I'm only seeing them for 45 minutes once a week, they're going to be with them probably 4 times a week. So if they're hearing that same message, the kids are hearing that same message, I think that that's a big impact that you can have.
And how about you, Andrew? How do you know you're doing a good job? Is it worth it? Are they getting value?
It's a very tough question that I think in the past decade I've gotten better at answering. So I look at it, if I'm evaluating, I guess two standpoints. Number one, how am I going to evaluate if what we're doing is effective? And number two, how are we going to sell the effectiveness to a parent group or a coach? So I look at it both from a process based and an outcome based. So on the process standpoint, I like to look at things from a curriculum, competency, capacity, and then confidence level. So if one of the biggest feedback points we get from parents isn't necessarily my kids running faster, skating faster, but they're more confident. They're more capable in their own shoes. So if we're starting to get more feedback on that level, that's kind of the subjective side of things that they're getting, fantastic. Secondly, like, it might sound cliche, but if we're getting return sales and athletes keep coming back and they're enjoying their experience, that's probably a good outcome based, that you're doing a pretty good job, that people want to keep coming back and hiring you for the service that you offer. But from a coaching standpoint, testing a 12-year-old isn't really something I think we should be doing, but it could serve as an opportunity to hopefully inspire the kids and empower and prepare and give them an opportunity to see if they're progressing. So it's a tricky question, but again, I think I come at it from the perspective that if you're going to choose a qualified strength and conditioning professional over a dad who's going to run the kids, then it comes back to a well-rounded curriculum, and having an understanding of what the curriculum should look like, what competency in that curriculum looks like, and then down the road capacity and things like that.
And Josh, I'm going to finish up with you, but I'm going to change the question up. Don't worry about the quality control, although you can speak on that if you want. Because most of the time you have them for a summer sometimes. But what I want to do is ask you, if you're at a university and you're a lead strength conditioning coach and there's one of you and there's 400 athletes and maybe you have one assistant, how the hell do you do revenue generation without it affecting everything else you do? Is there a way, or is that why you're leaving Guelph?
No, it's not. It's not. It's a bit of a chicken or egg, because I think what the schools want to see is that you have revenue generation so they can support additional positions. And you're like, well, we need additional positions to run the revenue generation. So you have to be able to make the case. Something's always going to give. And so in the last year, one of the challenges pre-COVID, so 2 years ago or what have you, when we had full staff and we didn't have all these lockdowns, one of the challenges was trying to balance, business development with a new delivery model for varsity. So basically, we did a split, and I took on 2 sports. Full-time assistant took on 2 sports. And then we had a part-timer who took on a sport. And so, we're servicing 10 teams. And the full-time assistant role also involved business development for the Performance Academy. But that became a challenge because now, the fun stuff, everyone who gets into collegiate strength and conditioning, the fun stuff is really, that, and not so much the business side. You don't get a lot of people from the private sector going to collegiate to build businesses. I think there's something to be said for sort of future development and training in these positions. But and so that was a challenge, is how do we spend the time without working 60, 80 hours a week and just being all over the place to actually market ourselves And so we tried to tie into the university resources a bit more and to try to say, okay, well, we have a Marcom department. Can they help us then? Like, how come we're doing this all on our own? Can the marketing and communications department not sort of lend a hand in here? And they were open to it, but they're also very strapped. And so it is one of the challenges with the university is that everyone's sort of being asked to do more with less. So I don't necessarily have a solution for you. But I think, can you do it? Yes. Are you going to be able to do it to the level that you probably picture in your head? Maybe not, unless you can convince the bean counters to support you in certain ways. And so is the outcome really to build stronger relationships in the community and develop partnerships that way and give back and give value? Or is it just to bring in money? Because I think those are two different things. They don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive, but if the goal is really just to bring in money and that's what the bean counters want, then that other stuff doesn't matter as much. I was going to say, sorry, the first part of the question though, Trev, what were you talking about before?
Well, the quality control, like,
yeah,
you only get them for a summer, sometimes 8 weeks. Really, do you make a difference?
Yeah, and we had similar challenges in terms of like we'd often only see a team like once a week, right? And so we struggled a bit with how do we develop the KPIs and assessments and our tests or whatever to be able to to show some sort of progress. And I think in the initial line of questioning there was a question around data collection. And so we're like, if we're training like 12-year-olds, like, do we really need to do a bunch? We're not going to strength test them, but what can we do that's going to be an easy way to show progress? So we tried to pick a few things like that are easily administered that they can do on their own later. And that typically would change with some sort of training. So it'd be things like a chin up test or a hang for time, something like a broad jump, maybe a seated med ball toss, things that didn't require a lot of equipment. And we know that everyone could execute at some level. And I think that was successful. But depending on the level of athlete, especially with the younger athletes, we looked more at subjective measures. So it was like, did the kid leave and before they were out the door, they're already talking excitedly about the next time that they came, like, oh, I can't wait to come back. This is so exciting. And Andrew kind of spoke to that. Or everybody kind of spoke to that is, are we giving them a great experience, and are we having those other secondary benefits that might not even be secondary, but maybe more primary, especially at that age with confidence and movement competency and that sort of thing. So if the kid left in the car and couldn't stop talking about the time that they had to their parents, who are the ones that are going to ultimately write the check and make the decision, I think that's probably your greatest KPI for, youth athlete training and RevGen.
And then last word to Jordan Foley. He wants to make a final point, and then we'll probably have to cut it off.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know if that's the way I said it, Trev, in chat there, but it's following up. It's an interesting conundrum, right? We get into these positions where someone largely gets hired to, in your case, Josh, start up a varsity strength and conditioning program from the ground up with no facility, all this kind of stuff, build a training culture, liaise with varsity coaches, but also do all this business stuff on the side. And whether you're qualified or competent to do it is like one part of the question, right? Not just you, but anyone else. But the other part of the question is why? Like, why would anybody, I'm actually going to go full send here. Why would anybody in their right mind do that? Like, put your 40 hours a week into the university and then put your extra 20 into a business across town and make a pile of money, actually have some sort of career diversity so that if something happens, you can make a choice, right? And the comment that I actually wanted to make was one of the more interesting things that emerged from my survey data was all these private people make way more money than we do. Than you do, Sam does. They're up there with Trev. Trev's a prof with a PhD and, tenured and all that stuff. But that's the category, like the 100,000 plus category for private sector coaches blew away everybody else. The amount of high salaries blew away all the other sectors. So universities put head strength coaches in the weirdest positions. They're like, hey, can you work your ass off training our athletes, but also work your ass off to develop a business that you don't have the skills to develop, so you got to work even harder on it so that we can make money. And after a while, it's just, it doesn't doesn't add up to me, right?
If that ain't a mic drop, nothing is. So what Jordan just said is you guys are all rich and he's poor because he works in a bureaucracy. All right. Andrew,
Buddy,
can I borrow some?
sorry, I was gonna say, can you like, hearing that, I'm totally doing things wrong because I am nowhere near 100 grand. So, so honestly, like if you can, like put me in touch with these people because I got to find out what they're doing that I'm not.
There we go. We'll work on that'll be our next shop talk. Well, I
Well, if I
enjoyed
knew,
that
I'd be-
one.
Yeah, if I knew, I'd be making 100 grand too. So
Mhm.
I'm not.
It's got to be a lazy prof, man. That's all you got to do. All right, guys. I like that one. I thought it went really well. Great group, great information. I might even borrow some ideas from this and use it to increase my millions. And next topic, I don't know. What should our next topic be? Any ideas? Anybody want to throw one out there? We're thinking business theme again. We tend to get away from sets and reps here, and maybe we might go a little more businessy even. I don't know. We'll see. So feel free to throw us any ideas if they come up, and we'll be back in a month. All
Thanks,
right,
guys.
Sam, done record. See you around. Stick around if you guys want to gossip.